Hello, class. My name is Alex Aruna, and today I will be talking about hydraulic fracking and its negative effects on the environment as well as its positive effects on the economy. So, to start out, I want to talk about the basis of what hydraulic fracking is. And it actually is a method of drilling into the ground to extract oil and natural gases from the ground. And we use this in our everyday life as to turn on the stove, electricity, to get to class if you have a car, many different ways. But it also causes breaking in the ground and pollutes water as well as pollutes the air. And causes climate change, environmental warming throughout the earth, as well as earthquakes. So there's a lot of consequences to this. Its historical background, it actually was established in 1860s, but it wasn't until 1940s where it was modernized to hydraulic fracking, which was established by a man by the name of Floyd Ferris and his company Stand Oil. And this study began a production between oil and gas, as well as the amount of pressure that was being used and calculated on each fracking well. And they took precision to each measure of pressure, within the well, excuse me, and this caused a hydraulic fracking method that boomed in the United States, creating an economical increase throughout the nation, as well as opening up new doors for trade and relations internationally. And yeah, so there's a lot there. But now to go on political views, the left usually tends to side with environmental growth as well, and as the right tends to side with economical growth. So this plays into effect because in an article by the U.S. Issues by John Manfreda, he speaks on the origin, and he quotes saying, "Over the past decade, the biggest story in the U.S. energy sector has been hydraulic fracking, also known as fracking. The drilling technique has enabled oil and gas producers to extract oil and natural gas from shale rock, thus increase oil and gas productions inside the U.S." So this is important to understand because the need and demand for hydraulic fracking on the basis of economic success, which is why the most right-sided individuals support hydraulic fracking. Um, and the left usually tries to shine a light on how carbon dioxide traps radiation at ground level, causing ground level ozone, which prevents the earth from cooling at night from the atmosphere. They mainly side with negative effects of hydraulic fracking, as I stated before, and it's recorded data towards climate change throughout the history since its birth. And I believe that the positive effects of hydraulic fracking are simply not worth the present and future consequences it will cause on the environment. On the other hand, the right believes that hydraulic fracking booms and fuels the economy demand of oil and natural gases internationally. So now we have a chart on the left-hand side that talks about the production of oil and gas in the United States. And here we have the top 5 states. So the production numbers are in the trillions on the left-hand side, excuse me, and the percentages on the right-hand side. So Texas is number one, then Pennsylvania, then Oklahoma, so on. The As you get down, it kind of consistently plateaus, but we do see Texas and Pennsylvania very high here in their production rates. And then when we go over to the consumption rates, Texas, California, Louisiana, New York, Florida. And I was surprised to see Louisiana there. I thought, I don't know, Illinois or someone else would have been in there due to population rates, but Texas is still number one on there. So we have that mirroring. So Texas is number one in production and number one in consumption, which is key to note. So now that we look at earthquakes, um, so we see that the most amount of earthquakes through 2005 to now due to hydraulic fracking consist of Texas with 4. The magnitude is not high, but it's also not really a geographical area for earthquakes, which is interesting because it has the most. But this is due to breaking in the ground due to hydraulic fracking. And when we look at the chart on the right, the employment rate for Texas is also the highest. So with I think 1,968,000. So we can't just necessarily take away 15% of the state's employees. I mean, we could, but it would cause chaos. And Louisiana, Oklahoma, Pennsylvania, a lot of those states are at higher than Texas per state rate percentages, which is crazy because you take hydraulic fracking away in those states, and there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be mad, obviously. But yeah, so Oklahoma, Louisiana, Pennsylvania, and Texas highly rely economically on fracking. So it's very interesting to note that. And when we go to Texas greenhouse effect, uh, these are all the locations of the drilling mines, and the red stands the key dangerous points, and the blue means the high pollution rates. So by an article by New York Times actually came out and talked about Texas and their greenhouse gas effect. And it states Republicans promote the state's economic miracle. Many climate scientists from Texas say prosperity has come at a steep price, as Texas emits more greenhouse gases than any other state, according to federal data, making Texas a huge liability in the United States when talking about the greenhouse effect on the environment. And yeah, that is very interesting to see because obviously Texas is number one in production, consumption, and employee rate, as we saw in the graphs, but it does have a huge liability on the rest of the United States and globally. We do see higher rates of warmth throughout the global atmosphere, and this is something to really be cautious about for not just our life, but in the future. So I came to a final decision with everything being said that and answering my own question of whether um, hydraulic fracking has more of a negative effect on the environment rather than a positive effect on the economy. And I would say, yes, it does have more of a negative effect on the environment than it does on a positive effect on the economy. So thank you. And these are my citations. If any of you guys have any questions of where I got my information from, you can go ahead and uh, click any of these and look them up. So thank you so much and have a good day.